so we're getting to that time. Draft talk time. I noticed a lot of that when I was gone. I'll get to the Lakers story in a second. But there's a report now from Adam Schefter. The Chicago Bears are leaning toward trading the number one pick. So my rule has always been, if you have the number one pick, you're not very good. So you should always trade it unless there's a Peyton Manning, a Trevor Lawrence, an Andrew Luck, or like one of these, transformational guys, John Elway, whatever it is, that it's a can't miss. And you get about one of those a decade, maybe two. I would always trade down because if you're drafted number one, historically, you're a bad team with 5 or 6 major holes. And two things can also be true. I know the internet leads you to believe this isn't the case, but two things can be true. If Caleb Williams of USC was available in this draft, the Bears would move off Justin Fields. They would. If there was an A++ prospect, you would move off Justin Fields. And the second thing is there isn't. So you're probably best served. They like Justin Fields. He's a big kid. He's got an arm. He's athletic. He's not good at the passing thing yet. And some of the quarterbacks who have come into this league that struggle with the passing thing, Josh Allen, take longer. The two best quarterbacks in the league, Joe Burrow and Mahomes, never struggle with the passing thing. Lamar Jackson can. Josh Allen can. The passing thing matters. And right now, he's not great at it. But the Bears' best plan is probably to trade down multiple times. Not once, but multiple times. You go to a Houston with a second pick or Indy with a fourth pick. They need a quarterback. You make a trade. All right? So you go to the Texans, you go to the Colts. And then you're at number 4. Let's say you do it with the Colts. And then you get closer to the draft and somebody didn't get Derek Carr or somebody didn't get Jimmy Garoppolo because there's going to be a lot of teams. The Jets need a quarterback and the Raiders need one and the Panthers need one and the Saints need one and the Colts need one and the Falcons need one. And they're not all going to get Derek Carr and they're not all going to get Jimmy Garoppolo and Aaron's probably staying in Green Bay. So you trade down one time and you go to 4 to the Colts. And then you trade down a second time and you call the Raiders or the Falcons and you get more picks. And that's the way you manipulate the draft, which Chicago historically hasn't done. Miami did it a few years ago, was very smart. You trade multiple times. You don't go for the bag with one team because GMs get very reluctant. The billionaire owners hovering over. You don't want to act like you're taken. So you do a small trade here and a small trade there, and you wake up and the Bears already have 2 fifth picks, and then you'd have 2 seconds and 2 thirds and maybe a second one, and you can rebuild your team. Because that defensive end from Alabama or that defensive tackle from Georgia or another defensive end from Clemson is not winning you games. They are not worth a half a point. You take out quarterbacks in this league, they are not worth a point. They had Khalil Mack forever. What did it matter? Okay? By the way, many of the best cornerbacks in the league, Sauce Gardner, they couldn't score touchdowns. Patrick Surtain, they couldn't score touchdowns. Many of the best corners, Jalen Ramsey, team fell apart offensively. So it's a quarterback league. We all know that. And if there's not a great quarterback and you have the number 1 pick, there's 2 great quarterbacks, I think, next year, 2 A++. These guys aren't. And everybody can talk about Bryce Young. Bryce Young played in warm Southern California in high school and warm Alabama in college. He's 5'11 and a half, maybe 6 feet. I doubt it, and 192 pounds. So he's a way short and way light, and it's Chicago, and it's cold, and it's windy. And even Justin Fields, who's a big, strong, mobile athlete, he doesn't like the cold. If you go look at the history of the NFL and northern teams, Aaron Rodgers, big arm. Brett Favre, big arm. Jay Cutler, big arm. Joe Flacco, big arm. Big Ben, big arm. Most northern quarterback, Terry Bradshaw, big arm. Go look at the history of northern teams. You got to usually have a big arm. Remember, Sean Payton was talking about Tua on this show about a month ago. And if you got a top 10 pick, you do not take a player who's a little short and a little light.
Let's do this. Let's not draft small players in the first 15 picks of the draft anymore in the first round. Let's not get away from prototype. And I talked with Bill Parcells about this, Ron Wolf, and those early picks have to be prototype players. You have to pay attention to typing and when you're looking at the health of players and you're looking at the size of players.
Baker Mayfield, a little small, didn't work out. You can go look at Tua. When you're drafting at the top of this board in the first round the Bears have, you're not going to roll the dice in a quarterback that's 2.5 inches short and 20 pounds light. even if he was great in warm weather California and warm weather Alabama. You're not. There's a quarterback, I think, I'll get to that later, I think if I was Chicago, I would consider, but he's not an A++ prospect. He comes with some things that concern me a little bit. Trade down. If there's not an Elway or there's not an Andrew Luck or Trevor Lawrence, trade down. Story this morning, they're considering it, leaning. How about lean all the way in and jump into that pool? All right. The Lakers won yesterday. I was flying back from Florida, so I watched the whole game. And, Delta's got those little TVs. They're just fantastic. So I watched the Jake Paul fight on my little phone. It's fantastic. Worth every penny. And I watched the Lakers Mavericks. And so let's start this topic with glass half full, Colin. Optimistic Uncle Colin. The Lakers at the trade deadline had 4 issues. 3 of the 4, here's the good news. Westbrook's toxicity. He's out. Clippers problem. Didn't have enough shooters. They've upgraded. Overall length and depth on the wing. They've upgraded. That is glass half full Colin. And let's get to realistic Colin. The 4th issue is LeBron is old and AD's always hurt. And even though Jared Vanderbilt was masterful and the Mavericks got their own issues, and they got a lot of them, my lasting image from yesterday's W is LeBron in the tunnel, limping out of it. You give me, in the last 2-3 years, a 3-week period when I didn't see this. The Lakers got a very nice coat of paint on their car during the trading deadline. But this puppy has 286,000 miles on it. That, sorry to break your heart. But Colin, you love the Warriors. They have Steve Kerr. Steph's coming back and a winning culture and the best coach in the game. This is an organization. The 2 best players, one is injury prone, and so is the other, and really old. And happiness is connected to expectations. And having LeBron for about a 10-12 year period was a guaranteed trip to the finals. Now having LeBron is cross your fingers on his health, and he should be able to, get you into the playoffs. And I do think the Lakers have added shooting and depth, a nice coat of paint. They can beat you more ways. I thought yesterday was a nice W. They got off to a terrible start, mostly because the Mavericks couldn't miss and the Lakers couldn't shoot. And Vanderbilt has been outstanding. He gives them size and length. It's a smaller league. And if you're a 6'9" guy that runs the floor, you can get a lot of points, and he did. And AD, when he's healthy, is a monster, and LeBron is still something that has to be reckoned with. But this car, that cone of paint, doesn't change things. To get to the next level, a championship level, you'll have to move off AD. So it's another cross your fingers moment. This was a nice win. It was a nice win, right? But Dallas is a bit of a mess. The West is fairly wide open, but not as wide open as we probably think. And that lasting image for me is LeBron limping out of the tunnel. If you think I'm wrong, you give me the last 3-week stretch with this team where LeBron or AD wasn't limping out of the tunnel, writhing in pain on the floor, or had to leave the game early. 2-week period. Go. I'll wait for your answer off the air. Okay? It's just the reality of what we have. It's the reality of what this team is. But the good news, glass half full Colin, is they did a very good job at the trade deadline to add pieces that allow them to win games like this when they don't play great. They can win more ways than they could 3 weeks ago. They're now 4-1 since they've made these moves. 4-1's good. I think they'll make it as a 6th seed, maybe play in. Absolutely. Watched every shot of it. I thought it was over beginning of the second quarter. They kept chipping away. They play now with more depth and passion. Vanderbilt's excellent. D'Angelo Russell wasn't around. They weren't fully stacked, and they won. It's on the road. It feels good. I'm not saying it doesn't. But once again, we got one of our 2 stars limping out of the tunnel. That is the reality of what this is. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.